and welcome. I am Exelite, and this is my channel. Today we're going to talk about a young woman who disappeared in 1997 in Shoshone National Forest. She went for a run, and she never came home. Before we get started, if you would please give this video a thumbs up, I would really appreciate it. If you would also please subscribe. That helps for my channel to be recommended. And if you want to, go ahead and share these videos. That would be great. Let's begin. On July 24th, 1997, Amy Bechtel was 24 years old, and she was from Lander, Wyoming. On the morning of July 24th, Amy told her husband Steve that she was planning on doing several errands in town after she got done teaching a children's weightlifting class at the Wind River Fitness Center. After Amy had finished, she called in at the Camera Connection photo store at about 2:30 p.m. And then she stopped by a store called Gallery 331. Her conversation with the owner, Greg Wagner, was the last confirmed sighting of Amy. After Amy left Gallery 331, she drove to the area near Shoshone National Forest to map out the course of a 10K run that she was organizing with a local gym. Amy was an avid distance runner. She had a marathon personal record of 3:01 and had aspirations of qualifying for the 2000 Olympic Marathon Trials. She was wearing a yellow or gold tank top, blue or black shorts, Adidas Trail Response sneakers, and a Timex Ironman triathlon watch. She also had a small double wedding band on her left ring finger. It is possible that she may have been seen running along the Loop Road. A footprint similar to her sneaker was found there, but it was destroyed before police could attempt to match it. At 4:30 p.m., her husband, Steve Bechtel, returned home, and he was surprised not to see Amy in the house. He reported her missing to the police at 10:30 p.m. that night with a really strange message. And this is what his message said. Yeah. Hey, I've got a person missing here, I think, and I wondered if you had a spare around any place. The next day, her unlocked, white Toyota Tercel wagon was found around a half a mile away from Fry Lake, which was supposed to be the end of the 10K hill run that she was planning, where the loop road joins the Burnt Gulch turnoff. There was no sign of Amy, but her sunglasses, a to-do list, and her car keys were left on the passenger seat. Her wallet was not found. There were no signs of foul play, with no indication of a struggle either inside or near the vehicle. The search for Amy began with just Steve and about 24 of his friends. But later that day there were ATVs, dogs, dirt bikes, and over 100 volunteers looking for any sign of Amy. The next day, horses came in and helicopters joined in. And by the third day, the search area had been expanded to a 30-mile radius. At first, investigators thought that Amy had fallen. She'd probably been injured in the forest, been run over on the road, or been attacked by a bear or a mountain lion. But then the focus of police investigations turned to Steve Bechtel, especially as many murders are committed by the victim's spouse. Amy and Steve had been married for just a little over a year, and both of them worked part-time at Wild Iris, which is the local climbing shop. Amy also waited tables at the Sweetwater Grill and taught a youth weightlifting class at Wind River Fitness Center. They had recently bought a home in Lander and planned to move in during the coming weeks. A few theories about what could have happened to Amy are Mother Nature. Is it possible that Amy fell during her run or was attacked by wild animals? Well, there's no evidence of torn clothing, blood, body parts, or bones that have ever been found. Could Amy have been murdered by her husband, Steve? After a search of the couple's property, detectives discovered Steve Bechtel's journals, which contained poetry or song lyrics that sometimes had violent overtones, often describing violence towards women and specifically Amy. A week and a half after Amy vanished, Steve employed lawyers and refused to take a polygraph test, which further raised suspicions for many residents of Lander as well as the media. Detectives interrogated Steve on August 1st, 1997, and they falsely claimed to have evidence proving that he was the one who had murdered his wife. A woman driving through the area from where Amy had disappeared claimed to have seen a truck matching Steve Bechtel's in the area with a blonde-haired woman in the passenger seat, but she was unable to positively identify that it was him. On August 5th, an FBI agent, Rick McCullough, accused Steve of murdering Amy, but Steve had an alibi. He was with Sam Leitner scouting a climbing spot the day Amy had vanished in the mountains. Steve was above Dubois, and since it was grizzly country, he took their dog Jones as well as a firearm. Questions then remained whether Steve had an opportunity or the time to get to Shoshone and carry out the crime, despite the distance from Dubois. Amy's brother, Nels, was especially angry at Steve's reluctance to take a polygraph test and to cooperate fully with the investigators. When her sister Casey Lee and Jenny Newton appeared on the Geraldo Rivera show on February 3rd, 1998, the host made a plea for Steve to be more cooperative with the authorities. Nell told the sheriff about one night when Amy and Steve were over for dinner. Nell noticed that Amy had some bruising, but she made a joke saying that Steve can get a little rough sometimes. Nell found Amy's reaction odd, saying Amy just laughed it off. She would not look at me in the eye, and I said that is not a normal reaction, particularly for Amy. Eventually, Steve had Amy declared legally dead, and in 2004 he married Ellen Sisman, with whom he now has 2 children. However, Steve Bechtel remained the prime person of interest in Amy's disappearance for many years. In July 2007, the 10-year anniversary of her disappearance, Roger Rizzer, the detective who succeeded Dave King on the case, commented on the cold case to the Billings Gazette. This is his quote: "In my mind, there is only one person that I want to talk to, only one person who has refused to talk to law enforcement, and that's her husband." Could Amy have been murdered by Dale Wayne Eaton, the Great Basin serial killer? A tip came in from a man named Richard Eaton, who told the sheriff that his brother, Dale Wayne Eaton, may be involved. But the investigators ignored the information as they were focused on Steve Bechtel at the time. By not pursuing the lead, they may have allowed the notorious Great Basin serial killer to get away, as on July 30th, 1998, nearly a year after Amy's disappearance, Dale Eaton was finally arrested for another murder. He was arrested in an area less than a 3-hour drive from Lander. Shannon Breeden, her husband Scott, and their 5-month-old baby Cody were traveling when their van broke down at a pullout along Interstate 80. Eaton stopped his off-green 85 Dodge van and offered them assistance and asked Shannon to drive. Eaton then pulled a rifle from the back of the van. He kidnapped the family at gunpoint and directed them south of the highway into the desert. Instead, Shannon wisely accelerated and turned in a tight circle instead, which enabled Scott to jump out of the van with the baby and Shannon to get out on the other side. Scott grabbed Eaton and hit him over the head with a rifle butt. After a struggle, Eaton was stabbed with his own knife and left while the family drove away at a high speed. Richard Eaton said that he knew that Dale had been camping at the Burnt Gulch area at the time of Amy Bechtel's disappearance at an average elevation of 7,860 feet, where she was making her 10K running route. And coincidentally, this was a favorite elk hunting and trout fishing spot of both of the Eaton brothers. But after Richard called police with his suspicions, the detective dismissed the tip, choosing to believe instead the word of Dale Eaton's niece, who said he was visiting her in Greeley, Colorado on July 24th. A $100,000 reward for information leading to a resolution of Amy's case meant that investigators were suspicious of Richard's motives. A plea bargain deal for the attempted kidnapping of the Breeden family meant that Eaton would serve only 99 days in jail. But a sample of his DNA was taken while he was incarcerated. He was still allowed to continue work on welding and construction jobs while in a halfway house due to prison overcrowding. On June 16, 1998, he failed to report to work despite strict parole conditions, and a warrant was put out for his arrest. Police finally spotted his van more than a month later near Dubois in the Bridger-Teton National Forest. He was arrested, and a shotgun was found in his van, leading to his imprisonment on federal weapons charges. On March 25, 1988, an 18-year-old whose name was Lisa Marie Kimmel was driving alone from Denver to visit a friend in Billings, Montana, in her black 1988 Honda CRX SI, which had a Montana license plate with Little Miss on it. She was planning to visit her boyfriend in Cody, but never got there. 8 days later, 2 fishermen found her body in the North Platte River near Casper. Autopsy results showed that she had been, the R word, bludgeoned and stabbed. After her family buried her, a strange note signed Stringfellow Hawk was found on Lisa's grave. In July 2002, investigators researching cold cases examined the seminal DNA from Lisa's attack and found a match for Dale Wayne Eaton. Eaton was due to stand trial that fall on a manslaughter charge after killing his cellmate with a lethal punch to the man's vertebral artery. A handwriting analysis from the note left on Kimmel's grave also matched Eaton's. Then, following a tip from a neighbor who remembered seeing Eaton digging in his yard, Lisa's car was found buried on his property in Moneta, just an hour and 45-minute drive east of Lander. He'd been using the car as a septic tank. A portion of the Montana plate Little Miss was found nearby. Inside his trailer, authorities also found women's clothing and purses and newspaper reports about other murdered women. Investigators then determined that Eaton had kidnapped Lisa at a remote rest area in Walton, then held her captive in a converted school bus, and repeatedly R-worded her before murdering her. An FBI profiler who examined the case said Eaton's behavior all fitted with that of a serial killer. In the subsequent trial, Eaton was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to death by lethal injection on March 2004. He had a stay of execution in December 2009, with his lawyers arguing that he was mentally unfit to stand trial. In November 2014, a U.S. district judge overturned his death sentence, which was then commuted to a life in prison. In 2010, Detective Sergeant Zerga traveled with the FBI agent to Colorado to try to interview Eaton, but he refused to speak with them, and with the threat of the death penalty no longer hanging over him, the investigators had no leverage. Authorities visited the Bechtels' old house at Lucky Lane in Lander with a search warrant to conduct luminol searches with the FBI and brought in cadaver dogs. They found nothing. A tip that Steve had buried Amy below the driveway of their would-be new home at 965 McDougal Drive before the concrete had set also came up with nothing. In late August 1997, the Federal Bureau of Investigations requested satellite photos from NASA of the area on the day of Bechtel's disappearance, but the satellite images provided no information. In January 1998, satellite images taken by the Russian space station Mir were also obtained by the FBI, but they also revealed nothing to value, as a cloud cover had obscured the area of interest. And as of today, there's been no one arrested for Amy Bechtel's murder or kidnapping, disappearance. So where is she? What happened to her? Was she killed by a serial killer? Should the police have listened to his brother calling to report him? I think so. Tell me below what you think. Thank you for coming. Good night.